Another slip and fall. Maybe the 100th time me and my best friend raced up a rusty slide in our kindergarten playground, making sure the other failed in an embarrassing fashion. Second to uphill slide races, our favorite thing to do was play Transformers at recess. And to the disappointment of all my friends, I was the only one allowed to be Optimus Prime. In my mind, he was the leader and therefore the most important. Unlike me, I'm sure many of you have siblings, but growing up, my best friend was the closest thing to a brother that I had. And our juvenile competition expanded far past the playground. In class, he could barely keep a pen straight, while I was already coloring in the lines. Thank God he moved to Texas before he caught up. But did any of this matter in the long run? Not really. But even at 6 years old, I learned that talent felt like winning and struggle felt like losing. Every day, we chase appearing dominant, throwing away our curiosity in the process. Pride has a way of shutting off our desire to grow in order to maintain an image. And if we're honest with ourselves, we still do this every day. Not in the playground anymore, but in sports, in school, and in our jobs. During any moment we want to impress someone, it's easy to cling to the things we're already good at and quietly sweep everything else under the rug. But what this framework robs us of is the struggle where talent grows. Now look, I'm not the most humble person in the world. And if I was, I wouldn't be on a stage with a microphone strapped to my face. So what's the point in all my lecturing? I'm not here to tell you to devalue your accomplishments or change anything about your self-image. Instead, the focus of humility is on detaching yourself from the persona we all unconsciously try to make, with every subtle flex or embellished skill. When I was young, the favorite dinner table conversation was always what I got on the latest test, right behind the fact that it should have been 100. Moreover, I should be loved by all my teachers because, as we all know, your second grade report card comments actually do go on your college application. Look, I wasn't a prodigy child in any capacity, but I sure made it seem to my friends that I was. From first to third grade, I participated in a school-wide program to help us develop our reading skills. Every time I'd finish an installment of my favorite series, I'd rush over to the computer lab to take a test, proving I'd read the whole book and to earn points for our classroom leaderboard. But eventually, these points mattered more than the stories I used to treasure. Our teacher hoped we'd level up our reading book by book. Friends of mine spent their independent reading time dissecting a new genre or looking up a vocab word. I was sat reading the next copy of Diary of a Wimpy Kid, cover to cover. When I realized I would get points even for easy books, reading skills was the last thing on my mind. It turns out intellectual growth is slower than gaming the system. I had my eyes on the prize, the #1 spot on that leaderboard. I knew the #1 spot and that shiny San Jose Sharks medal would come regardless of how much I learned. I just needed the most points. I still glance at those awards on occasion, and after enough time gloating in my former glory, I realize this is a textbook example of what we do on a daily basis. While being good at anything should come with its fair share of recognition, we eventually disconnect the achievement factor from the actual skill itself. It becomes easy to invest into the former rather than the latter. Our tendency to cloud our humility is often subconscious, but deep down we know how much of what we say is reflected in reality. This creates an internal conflict where you want to look like you're close to the finish line, but accept that you're actually miles behind. No matter how much I love to inflate my own intelligence, there was no hiding the fact there's always more to learn. The first thing we do when we get a test grade back is obviously ask our friends what they got, right? This immediate reflex comes from our unconscious habit of constantly comparing. So what happens when there's no way to do that? From 4th to 8th grade, that comparison wasn't an option for me. I'm sure the students here have all heard of Khan Academy, the online learning platform you turn to when your teachers just can't explain things the way you need. Okay, maybe not that many of you, but definitely my fellow trig survivors. What I'm sure you didn't know, however, is that Sal Khan, its founder, opened a physical school I attended 5 years before high school. Tests weren't given on specific days. Instead, my work was self-paced with the flexibility to revise over and over and over again. Statements about what score I got didn't hold any weight because we all knew we'd learn what we need to learn in due time. I could be motivated primarily by my own curiosity. And without the pressure of performing the best on my first attempt, I started to find meaning in what we discussed, think deeper about what we read, and actually enjoy the things we practiced. With no metric to build up my image, curiosity was at the front and center of my education. Looking forward, this applies to much more than just school. In real life, there are metrics that determine progress or success. We don't get to choose whether they exist or not, but we do get to choose what we focus on. And in my experience, growth came from rejecting the comfort of looking smart and embracing struggle even when I took a hit to my ego. When I left behind my non-traditional education to come to St. Francis, I had to learn to focus on curiosity first all over again. Instead of self-paced assignments, I was doing daily homework for the first time in 5 years. I could check my grades or ask my friends about theirs during any hour of the day. Still, I chose to see my academic progress as a ladder to climb instead of as a badge to display to others. Although this mindset shift allowed me to focus on the learning experience over numbers, another area in my life brought about tension between how others perceived me and my personal growth. Because learning humility doesn't stop in any particular place. It just finds a new way to hit back. I'm sure it's not a shock the next place I applied this mindset is in a very competitive endeavor, sports. The athletes here must all have their stories about crazy conditioning sets, late night tournaments, or an early morning practice that pushed their limits. But every physical challenge is backdropped by a mental one. I had to learn to be comfortable being uncomfortable and grow while being visibly bad at something. Thai boxing was my outlet to do just this. When I started at 14, the rounds we trained for were just 3 minutes long. Those first couple sessions, I learned just how long 3 minutes really is. With burning shoulders and a perpetually empty pair of lungs, I struggled those first weeks, outshadowed by those around me day after day. As I got better at Muay Thai, I finally found myself ready to spar. For those that don't know, sparring is the exam of your technique. When you step onto the mat or into the ring, no one's trying to knock you out, but you get to see how much you can keep your composure when someone's actually throwing strikes back. Those first couple of Thursday night sessions, I learned just how fast I could gas out and forget to keep my hands up. In exchange, I got what I like to call real-time feedback. And by that I mean busted lips and bruised legs. In fact, it felt like my opponent's hands were heat-seeking missiles, given the number of times I felt them sting my nose. Even after almost being put to sleep with a punch to the stomach, I remember eagerly raising my hand for another round with anybody that was down. For my testimony, this sounds like a stupid hobby that I don't even enjoy. I can assure you this is not true. Because all beginners that stuck through the pain like me find themselves at whatever late-night sparring session their gym has. Not because they thought they would win, because they knew they would lose and get better because of it. This goes against our instincts to always win, but there's something admirable about taking on the challenge that is above you and being open to struggle, because that's exactly where the real growth occurs. Our ego motivates us to win as much as we can, so we can tell all our friends about that kick we landed last night, but all the lessons I learned are from when I got punched in the face. I want to challenge all the non-combat athletes in the crowd. Find the competitor, challenge, or goal that is above you, and go get your ego bruised by its difficulty. With that being said, humility doesn't mean intentionally downplaying yourself. It means focusing less on how you're perceived and more on who you're becoming, even when that progress feels invisible. Letting go of the need to be seen as smart or talented or successful frees ourselves from fear that hovers over our opportunities. I learned this early on through my experiences, but it doesn't stop there. The hits that both my GPA and my face have taken taught me the same lesson. Shutting off ego creates growth. So now, don't be afraid to ask questions that make you look dumb. Challenge the expert even when victory isn't promised, and take feedback from people who know more even when it hurts. Choose progress over perception, because every choice that protects your ego leaves growth on the table. Thank you.